Happy belated anniversary, wifey.
Oh, I had no idea what you were about to say. I was like, belated what? Yes, happy anniversary. I know it's
Not that, for those listening, we did have a happy anniversary on the day, so it wasn't as if I forgot that.
That's a good clarification point. Yes. It's always nice remembering those milestone memories, I guess. But we also, which I am very happy about, we've always been a couple that, I don't want to say we don't care about that stuff, but it's not that important to either one of us to make some big, huge to-do. And if one person is like busy or tired or maybe forgot until a few days before and didn't have a ton of time to prepare something, the other one is never going to be butthurt.
That is for sure. I think that's one of the fun things about being two people that live very spontaneously and in the moment. I mean, that's one of the benefits. The maybe not so much of a benefit is that sometimes not a lot happens because we're not that forward thinking, in terms of like planning out every cool weekend and date for the next 6 months or year. It's kind of just like, oh, hey, this thing just came into our awareness. It sounds fun. You want to do it. So there's a gift in the spontaneity, and also not being attached to making big ordeals of things like that. But I wanted to say it anyway, because it's been a wild and beautiful ride.
It has been very miraculous and God-centered and God-informed and God-led, as well as our souls being a part of those three things that I just said as well. And yeah, so I think we chose on that day, which it's November 8th, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, for me, and some people really trip out when, I don't know, somehow anniversaries are coming up or wedding dates. And sometimes like I typically say, I know it's sometime in November, but sometimes I do kind of forget. And people are always like, so, I don't know, caught off guard or weirded out or tripping out over that. And I'm like, you have to understand, like, our wedding date is not a date that you and I sat down and meditated on and consulted charts in the heavens and picked a date and planned for years for this particular day. We literally flew to Las Vegas to give separate talks at a sacred psychedelic conference, and God provided a download that we could get married while we were there, and we did. So it's like November 8th is only significant because it's the day we randomly, spontaneously ended up getting married by Elvis.
It's also the day that I launched my first business, November 8th.
Which is helpful for you.
Yeah, it does help. November 8th, 2008 was when I founded School of Style and had my first class as a teacher. But yeah, I think what makes our anniversary fun for me, even though it wasn't a big traditional wedding, was just the hilarity that we were married by an Elvis impersonator in Graceland Chapel.
I mean, hallelujah. I still am so thrilled that it wove together in truly a divinely orchestrated way, believe it or not. I mean, it's kind of absurd. It's kind of hilarious. It's pretty random, but also it was truly, speaking of the God-informed, God-led thing, that was truly never a thought that had crossed my mind. I'd actually never been to Vegas. I'd only been to other parts of Nevada. So it wasn't on my personal radar at all. And I don't know, I always dislike repeating stories, and I don't know if I've told this before, but yeah, it was only when the plane was getting ready to touch down, again, for a work, like 48 hours quick work trip in Vegas, that I remember the exact spot in my brain that the download came in, and I just casually turned to you, spoke the download out loud, which was, hey, we could get married while we're here. There was no conversation because we were like packing our bags to deboard, to deplane. And yeah, it somehow all came together, but I really relish in it. And it's also so curious to me too, how I think it was only 2 months after we had that Elvis wedding. Remember, they put the kibosh on those and they're no longer possible because the Elvis estate, for whatever reason, I don't know the details, but they didn't want Elvis impersonated weddings happening anymore in Vegas. So we were like in the last crop of folks who could ever have that be possible.
That was the best ever.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
It was. And then the last thing I'll say just around this kind of theme is it is easy for me to remember our first official date because my birthday is New Year's Day and our first official date was New Year's Eve. And remember how I thought you were going to surprise me with the cake because you vanished like right before the ball was about to drop, right before midnight, like Luke disappeared. And I was looking around because we were at this big Kundalini gathering, which was really lovely, by the way. And a couple of our friends were there, Bree and Elliot. And I, was within 10 minutes of it turning midnight. I'm looking around everywhere and I can't find you. And I'm not like bothered by that, but my mind went to, oh, I bet he's like in the back room, like lighting the candles to a birthday cake, like, because it's pretty, I don't know, it's somewhat rare that somebody has a birthday as soon as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve, which is the case for me. And then I think like, I don't even remember if you made it back even before it turned midnight. If you did, it was like,
no, it was after.
It was after. So then you come.
I was up like taking videos for Instagram
and
on the balcony.
When he came in empty handed with no birthday cake and like no thing, again, I wasn't like, my feelings weren't hurt by it. It was more hilarious that I had created this picture of this story in my head that's what you were doing. And then you just like flow in, from getting Instagram story videos and you're just like, hey. But you did what was really cute, as I remember you, I think I was sitting on the ground and then you, if I'm not mistaken, knelt before me and you were like, can I give you your first kiss of the new year or something like that? And I was like,
That was the first kiss.
Yum, yum, yum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How fun. What a fun ride it's been.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever think about the air you're breathing right now inside your home or office? Well, I didn't either until I remodeled my first house a few years back. I was so excited to do it right after being a renter for so many years. So we got the best water filtration system, we shielded the house for EMF, we did all the things. But I also wanted to take care of the air. So when it came to air quality, it was a no-brainer. We went with the Jasper Pro. Here's the deal. The air inside our homes is just nasty, like up to 10 times more polluted than outdoor air nasty. It's really bad. And with your windows shut most of the time, you're basically marinating in a toxic soup of dust, mold, VOCs, and God knows what else. Well, Jasper puts an end to all of that nonsense. Their 3-stage filtration system traps 99.97% of the funk floating around in your indoor air. And not just the easy stuff like dust and pollen either. It gets the hardcore pollutants like mold spores and bacteria too. So jump on this Jasper now and get an incredible Black Friday discount. Here's what you do. Visit jasper.co/Luke and use the code Luke for $400 off. And what really blows me away is how smart this thing is. It even monitors air quality in real time and automatically adjusts to clean your air as efficiently as possible. So get over to jaspr.co/Luke and don't forget to use the code Luke. What was your take on the, speaking of Kundalini, on that we just finished watching this series on HBO called Breath of Fire?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, which is really well done. I mean, it's really compelling whether or not you knew anything about that scene, but it was around Guru Jagat. He was a former guest on this show many years ago. And that whole scene, it was really wild for me to watch as someone who was, I don't know, that I was like, I wasn't necessarily involved in the Rama or 3HO world, which this was kind of focused on, but I was a regular practitioner of that yoga for many, many years and took teacher training and taught some of it. And it was really beneficial to me. And then over the past few years, all of this shady stuff around Yogi Bhajan, and then Guru Jagat came out, and it was really wild to watch that, having had some years kind of apart from that whole scene. What was your objective experience of it?
I mean, I feel a little bit of like a hesitant percolation coming up in me because I didn't know, and I know you probably didn't know that we were going to talk about this either. because we normally just flow organically when we do these episodes. But yeah, there's just a part of me as a fellow female spiritual teacher that kind of really doesn't honestly want to speak to it at all publicly because, for one, I actually never met her. I know you know her, and I think pretty much almost all of my friends knew her or were very close with her. But there's just, I don't know, there's just something that wells up in me that's from like, I don't know what right words would, properly classify it, but just kind of this deep reservoir of sacredness in terms of, again, like I never met her and I know what it takes to embark on a completely devotional path. And I know what one may have to endure, especially when you're a female spiritual teacher, especially when you're a female spiritual teacher that is supposed to be also a public figure and front facing in the media. And it's absolutely not for the faint of heart, period. And if anyone thinks that it is, I welcome you to attempt the walk. And so, there's just, you get what I'm trying to say? It's like, I personally didn't know her, and there's just like a fellow mutual respect current that's opening up inside of me of like, I don't know that I really want to touch it for those reasons.
Yeah, well, also, we just watched it. There hasn't been a lot of reflection.
Yeah.
And also, it's just, one production company's interpretation of events, right? And so
to which she wasn't able to speak for herself, obviously.
Yeah.
So, I guess regardless of all of it, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Katie Griggs, Guru Jagat, and that's kind of all I feel comfortable saying.
Yeah, I think this, anytime there's any sort of documentary about a cult-ish organization, I find that really interesting, having had some direct experience with a very cultish boarding school for 2 years when I was a teenager. And also just as someone who's been at different times interested in different mystics and spiritual teachers and saints around whom organizations have formed, and sometimes they've gone well and other times not. So I'm always just interested in that dynamic, kind of the cult of personality, and how people who have a spiritual yearning are drawn to different teachers, leaders, organizations, and some of the things that can go awry, even within well-intentioned organizations.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating social phenomenon to me.
No, it is to me too. And one thing that we did chat about briefly after last night's episode was, and again, let me preface this by saying, I am absolutely not discrediting anybody's experience. If you feel like you were wronged or harmed in a cult, and, I'm sure that was a very real and true experience for you. And like you said, you yourself went to a boarding school that has like survival, I'm survivor of support groups from that school that you attended. So my own husband, has been in a similar situation. But at the same time, I just think, what was kind of shared on last night's episode rang to be true. You can kind of classify any group as a cult. And I think if you especially are on the outside of that group and don't walk a spiritual path, it can easily be looked at as that. And I know that I have a lot of friends who run, spiritual groups, and they have been called cult leaders. And I know for a fact these people are not running a cult and they are not cult leaders. Again, I'm not saying that does not exist out in the world. I'm just saying that it opens up a very watery pool when you start to label things as a cult.
Yeah, well, it takes someone from the outside or someone who is formerly in it to define it as such. I mean, I saw something recently about from some, people that I think are really wacky, but like critical of Aubrey's, fit for service thing. And I don't even know a lot about fit for service. I know him and Kyle and a few people directly associated with it who have been great friends and great people to me. But I haven't been a member of that. But, to me, it seems like, I don't know. It's
a really lovely group of people coming together to do good work.
Doing good things in the world. I haven't seen anything that's, sounded strange or looked strange to me from the outside again. So, I think anyone that's going to kind of get groups of people together that have a shared mindset or shared belief system is potentially prone to that. And there are also, of course, throughout history, many people that might have started out with pure intentions and spiritual gifts, and then their ego and greed and thirst for power has gotten the best of them, and they've mutated into something that is,
which can absolutely happen. And that's one of the things when you do answer the call to being a quote unquote spiritual guide, spiritual leader, spiritual teacher, you really, in so many different parallel universes, realms within yourself, outside of yourself, have to keep specifically that piece so in check. I mean, there's a trillion things that any integrity-filled spiritual guide has to monitor kind of 24/7 within themselves. But that one is, toward the top of the list, because the ego, if left unchecked, can get squirrely in some real sneaky ways real fast.
Yeah, the fallen guru phenomenon has always fascinated me, because you have someone who has authentic spiritual gifts and insights, and you could say in a positive sense, power, or has powers.
Yeah, it's real gifts.
Yeah, but then beacons of light can also attract dark forces, and many of them over time have obviously succumbed to the temptations of power and sexual exploitation and all kinds of dark stuff. So you
really have to watch the motivation in such a ruthlessly self-honest way, the motivations behind the steps you're taking for your spiritual brand, for your spiritual classes that you're teaching, for the spiritual courses that you're launching. It's like truly continuously checking yourself on what is honestly the driving energetic force that is inspiring me to create X, Y, and Z. And, because you embark on this path because you want to be of service. But again, if you leave things going unchecked, it can morph fast, especially if you start to get attention. And if you're not used to being in the public eye, and then that's something that really juices up that ego. I think it's interesting for you and I, and I'm not saying this makes us immune to this piece we're talking about, because we keep each other in check and ourselves individually in check with our egos all the time. But before I had my spiritual awakening, I had kind of been in the media since the day I was born. I literally was born into the newspaper. I was really well known as a child prodigy athlete, which went through being a college athlete. And then I was a radio host at a hip hop station. I was a television host for national daytime television talk show. I was a television producer for major networks in New York City. I was literally born into the familiarity of the public eye and the media. And so I'm grateful that I have that history, because that's not one of the pieces, when the veil lifted and I started to see why I'm really here and how, my shamanic gifts are to express publicly and through the media to reach the masses. I don't get any sort of tickly feeling because, there's a write-up about me or something. You know what I mean? That's not going to veer my ego off course. Yeah. Which I'd never really thought about in that way until now, but.
Did you know that at least 1 in 4 couples are struggling with fertility? And many of us have issues with low mood and sex drive, difficulty losing body fat, and poor cardiovascular health. Can you guess the common denominator in all this? That's right, I'm talking about testosterone, folks. And let me tell you, low T is something that affects women as well as men, so everyone listen up.
Most women after 25 or 30 have low testosterone, and it turns out healthy women should have at least 10 times more testosterone than estrogen. I had to look that up to believe it, but it's actually true. Upgraded Tea is a collection of herbs that have all been clinically studied and shown to produce award-winning results. Users have seen a boost in testosterone up to 30% in just 90 days. It's got 5 ingredients that raise testosterone while lowering both inflammation and stress and boosting mood by regulating cortisol. Upgraded Tea enhances blood flow, promotes lean muscle mass and immune function, supports heart health, and boosts collagen for healthy hair, skin, nails, and bones. And of course, it also supports sexual health and erectile function, which is a win for both men and women. So to get on board with this testosterone boost, go to upgradedformulas.com and use the code Luke15 for 15% off. Oh, and keep in mind that most supplements on the market are very poorly absorbed. The key difference with upgraded formulas is that their nano-stabilized supplements bypass digestion and go straight into the blood where they can get to work doing what they need to do. So stop wasting your money on expensive pee, folks. Go to upgradedformulas.com and use the code Luke15.
Yeah, it's funny. In a different way, I think for me, I've had some help with immunity to that, in that I worked with celebrities for so many years.
Exactly.
And I got to see the false idol syndrome, seeing someone who was adored and worshiped by millions of people and seeing them at face value in real life, and seeing how deeply flawed many of them were, or if they were, healthy, integrated people, that they were just a person behind that phenomenon of fame and the kind of allure of glamour, So I got to see kind of, oh, okay, this one's drinking their own Kool-Aid and they're like not human anymore because they believed their own hype. And then, you meet someone who has kind of seen through that and knows that they're just playing a role and that's how they make a living. And being a celebrity is just kind of an artifact of them being a great musician or actor or something, but they're still just
super low key about it.
Yeah, grounded, normal person who acts the same. Like on a shoot, for example, you could see like one type of celebrity that had some humility about them would treat a PA the same way they would treat the director,
Absolutely.
Right? And then you'd have another one that come in and treat all of the lower ranking staff or crew members like shit, and then would be very respectful and ass kissing to publicists, producers, directors, etc. You kind of get to see that.
Oh yeah.
But then beyond that, like I was always behind the camera, so I was a nobody, in that realm. But the only things that I ever did in public had to do with being in recovery and speaking at meetings. And when you're a speaker, and in Southern California, in LA, I mean, it might be a few hundred people, and you get up and speak for 45 minutes at a podium and things like that at different recovery groups. And you learn real quick that you can't bullshit bullshitters. And so my training as a public speaker was from a crowd that are just like waiting to eviscerate you and looking for any signs of ego or pride. And, if you were to get up there and really think you're special, you'll find out in real time with very obvious body language and other feedback that like you're full of shit. You need to sit down, So it's like a trial by fire of.
Yeah. What great training grounds though. That's
incredible. I mean, it's training in authenticity and also staying right size. Like just because you're, at this podium speaking and sharing your experience, strength and hope, your wisdom, and, taking, some ownership of that, hopefully not pride, that doesn't put you in any kind of a higher position than those in the audience. So there's a leveling there that, I don't know, I just cut my teeth that way. So I don't perceivably feel like I've ever felt better than anyone, as a result of having a platform or going to speak at conferences and things like that. I'm literally just the same as the person sitting there. I'm just happened to be the one that had something to say that someone wanted to hear. And so they put me over on this side of the room with a microphone,
Yeah, that's really interesting though. I had never connected that either. I guess I'm having a new layer of appreciation for both of our backstories and the history of the paths we walked, which if you listen to a couple episodes ago that you and I did, I'm saying I don't really like anymore to reflect back, but yeah, I think that that's really interesting because you do really command a stage. And when you give talks, I've always been so intrigued at the just really natural magnetism that you hold. And I would put money that a lot of that was garnered through your literal countless talks of your almost 30 years of
Hundreds.
I mean, that's wild when you look back and don't you think it's fascinating though, once we realize why we're really here and we're answering that true God and soul infused calling within us, that we can look back and see the things that prepped and trained us so that when we did finally allow ourselves to get out of our own way and to really be stepping into our calling, that we're equipped with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, I think one thing that I learned was that I really, in those kind of scenarios in which I was, chosen to be a speaker, which is like, I mean, you're amongst a group of people that have failed at life objectively, right? So you're not giving a speech at the Academy Awards, right? I mean, you're talking to a bunch of people that really need help, and you've gotten that help because you needed it, and now maybe you have the ability to help other people. But one thing that I started to realize over the years is not only was my message better received when it was given with authenticity and vulnerability, but it actually helped facilitate my own healing and my own ongoing education, right? Whereas getting up in front of people and kind of putting on a show or trying to be who you think they want you to be so that you get their approval is a very empty feeling and fleeting, because there's a part of you that knows the person they're liking is not even who you are. It's the mask or the persona that you're projecting to those people. And so the accolades or approval or popularity or pats on the back or whatever it is that you get don't really land because what you were sharing with them wasn't your authentic self, Whereas in situations in which I felt like I was really just authentic and truthful and speaking the language of the heart rather than the language of the mind, I'd have beautiful interactions with people afterward where they have tears in their eyes and I have tears in my eyes, and we're having like real authentic connection. And that would just fill my heart so much that it helped me to be able to discern like when I was going in that direction that felt so much more fulfilling and enriching versus going the other direction of wanting to be liked and popular and all of those kind of things, It just feels it basically just feels more relaxing to just be yourself.
Well, yeah.
Even if you don't know that it's
just in real life too.
Yeah, exactly. We were going to talk about that today.
Well, oh my God. Yeah. Like I'm just so glad I was, didn't gain along life's path any sort of propensity to just not live fully transparently and honestly. And I'm also glad that my own soul and God-given grid, before I incarnated, didn't have those chips put inside of me, like something that I had to work on or overcome. Like I don't have the energy to be anything but honest. And that's what I kind of always remember about myself. I've had to kind of refine, that what I would consider a gift in me of just, I really can't be anything other than just honest and authentic. I've kind of had to refine delivery and really tune into each scenario and each person. There's still some curveballs that happen even when you're that thoughtful about it. But I literally, I wouldn't be able to keep up. I wouldn't want to keep up. And I don't have the time or energy to like construct and craft and I don't know, just all that stuff. But one thing before we get going down that track, sorry, I'm having with the allergies and seasons changing in Texas, I having to take a lot of deep breaths, and I'm feeling some potential cedar vibes starting to roll into town here. So
Got to get you on the Browns gas, babe.
yeah, I got to get back on that. But one thing that I started to reflect a bit on that I'm so grateful for, and I mentioned it last night, and for whatever reason, just want to speak to it now in terms of like things we're grateful for when we kind of reflect back on our path, is the pacing that God really impressed upon my heart to take once I had my divine intervention and spiritual awakening. And I was, sharing with you again that time when I was living in New York City and, really doing nonstop, really massive shamanic events and ceremonies and gatherings with hundreds or thousands of people, and partnering with many of the biggest brands on the planet. And some might view it as at the height of, a part of your career path. Things were really, really happening. And I'll never forget, I got back to my apartment in Brooklyn, and God so clearly spoke to me and told me I needed to stop giving all talks and stop doing all events. And, also I'm so grateful that I fully am surrendered to living by God's instruction. So I knew I was going to heed that. But then my only stipulation back to God was, well, I'm a single woman who does not come from like money, living alone in New York City. And so how might thou continue to make a living if you want me to instantaneously stop doing all the things that are helping me pay my rent? But I'm just so glad because, well, actually, I don't think I want to reference the Guru Jagat documentary because, again, I don't know her personally. But just some of the things that felt like they got a bit frenzied and rushed or over consuming with the robustness of some of the things continuously happening potentially on her path. It just brought me to that reflection that I'm speaking to, and how grateful I have been led to so many what I call sacred pauses along my personal devoted shamanic path. And I think those, and sometimes those sacred pauses go on for years. That one that I was just giving the example of went on for almost 3 years. I, again, have been on one that's been about 3 years in terms of, I would really say that I've been kind of semi-retired / fully retired at times over the last few years, devoting to, our path to trying to conceive and all of that. And I'm so grateful that my ego doesn't push me to like ignore those instructions from God, and that, again, my ego is not so tripped up in being, this public figure, author, whatever, teacher, that when I'm told I need to remove myself a bit or fully from the limelight, like I have no problem doing that. And I feel my life is all the more empowered, and the enrichment, like there's just such a unique energy that I feel I'm gifted when I allow for the sacred rest, the sacred semi-retirement. And then when I'm guided, like right now, I have a new book idea that I'm really inspired by and I'm really lit up and excited about. And I actually enjoy brainstorming it each day a little bit and just seeing what ideas come in. And that feels really good. But this is the first book idea that's really lit me up since Animal Power came out, a number of years ago. So anyways, I just wanted to speak to, and I'm not saying, every person on the spiritual path is supposed to live this way, because we all have a unique encoding and a unique way that we're to be here and be of service. But I would recommend taking some beats and taking some rests and removing yourself intermittently, because things can just get ahead of you. And again, that squirrely word is coming in. It's just good to stop and recalibrate and check yourself.
I'm going to take a moment here to share an incredible resource with you. It's called Quantum Upgrade. Every unit of matter contains quantum energy, and so do our cells. Every person has a quantum energy field and constantly interacts with other quantum energy fields. Quantum energy is so important that the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics was specifically about quantum entanglement. Let me explain here how Quantum Upgrade uses this energy to powerfully enhance our well-being. Through many years of research, Quantum Upgrade has developed one of the world's most potent sources of usable quantum energy. When you sign up for their service, Quantum Upgrade associates your home, your phone, your business, your pet, or even your car with this energy source. And you all know by now what an EMF mitigation fanatic I am. That's because EMF frequencies are incoherent and dramatically stress the human body. Well, Quantum Upgrade counters this problem by harmonizing the EMF to make them no longer toxic to your body. This is why I love the service on my car. My EMF fatigue has dramatically improved. I mean, it very obviously works. But apart from the EMF benefits, Quantum Upgrade also enhances your vitality in many other ways, which are shown in the studies on their website. So if you want an affordable way to deal with EMF and experience the vitality you deserve, check out quantumupgrade.io and get a 15-day free trial using the code LUKE15. Again, that's quantumupgrade.io.
I think when one's identity and self-worth are tied into their public persona, it's only a matter of time before that's going to crash at a certain point. And if that's kind of all you have to rely on for your sense of value, that's something you can't really control, can be taken away at any moment, right? Mm-hmm. It's also based on your continued production. If you want to stop producing and people aren't getting that version of you and you're not getting that feedback to sustain you and you don't have anything internally, it can probably be pretty dark.
Yeah. And I can hear some listeners asking the question, well, how did you make a living? So I just want to quickly answer that. The idea that was really divinely given to me is because I had the background that I had in media, and I actually, got my degree in advertising, and went to the School of Communications at the University of Alabama and studied PR and all of those areas within that school. I then was able to take those 2 3/4 of a year, almost 3 years of that sacred pause for me, where I removed myself from the public and from the limelight for the most part. And I was able to help other healers and spiritual teachers that I felt in alignment with. I helped to rise them and empower them and get them into more of the media and the spotlight. So I launched Shamanic PR, and I would help guide other practitioners who just have no understanding of any of that stuff, but they're really great guides, and they're really integrity filled, and they're really naturally great speakers, but they just had no idea how to start that facet of the lane outside of like being a one-on-one healer. So that's the answer too.
I remember that when we were still friends, just when we were in the friend zone. I remember when you were telling me about that. Yeah, I'm just kind of in a new phase. I'm just in my apartment in Brooklyn and not going out, not doing the things.
So thank you again to Pure Love, God Goddess, Earth Mother, to my guides, my main go-to team for instructing me to take those pauses. I'm really grateful I know how to do that. So new era time. It's really ushering itself in. I can't be the only one that's been feeling this. Yes, one piece that might be adding to the new era emergence for me is the fact that I'm a Capricorn, and I don't really follow or live by astrology at all, but I do know that Pluto has been in Capricorn for the last 16 and a half years or 16 years. And Pluto is widely known as the planet of death, birth, the underworld, deep transformations. And so I know there's probably other Capricorns who are listening right now being like, yes, because we have been in it. So deep bow to all my fellow Capricorn brothers and sisters out there. Because I know for sure the last 16 years of my life, it's just been, it's been a full-on journey. So I'm intrigued. It's about to move out of Capricorn. I think, when will this air? Do we know?
I don't know. Pretty
Sometime
soon. A couple weeks, I think.
So I think by the time this airs, it will have
I think the end of November.
Okay. So I think it moves out of Capricorn on November 19th or something like that and goes over into Aquarius. But with that huge shift that will only happen once in our lifetime, there's this like whole new timeline that's being born. And the phrase that kept coming to me, I think I posted about it a month and a half or 2 months ago, was specifically those two words, new era.
New era.
Yeah, that. And so it feels very different. It's not a rebirth. Like it's not that. It's something else. It's a new era.
New era.
And so I wanted to just bring this to light to if the folks joining us for this episode haven't really felt into this piece, I would invite you to see if this resonates. And if you could begin to construct an entirely new architecture inside of yourself that would help to, start to inform a new way of living in your new era, what would be a part of this new architecture? And once I started to kind of dream into that, I got really clear. One piece that I'd like for us to unpack a bit more is the village oracle woman brought back to life. Like the whole concept of how, hundreds or thousands of years ago, it was completely commonplace to have, an appointed oracle of the village or medicine woman of the village or witch healer of the village who is just known. You go to this woman for her seership, for her tinctures, for her advice, for her guidance. And it's my belief that somewhere along the way, when the churches started to come into play more and more, and it was more about the preacher and priest vibes, I believe that's when they wanted to portray a lot of these women, witches and oracles, as these dark magic sorcerers that were bad and, doing these dark things, and really killed off, this whole most natural way of our societies and cultures functioning. And so I've really had God impressing upon my heart so loud and clear over the last few months on a personal, individual, just within my own self level, on a level even within our marriage, on a community and a collective level. I mean, I've been super completely out of the closet doing this work for, I don't know, like 15 years or something now. So it's not about like me stepping out as as an oracle. I mean, I've long been out from pretty much the day I had my awakening, but it's just like this, okay, right now, with these new era energies birthing, with this new timeline birthing, with this whole new paradigm on Earth that has been really opening up over the last few years, what does the village oracle, how does she live within me? And what is her place now? What is my place as one of countless village oracles walking the planet right now? What is my place right now here in this town, here for the world? And it's just been so beautiful and mystifying and just really beautiful for me to be dreaming into that, praying into that, and seeing how that's informing this very foundational new era architecture that's starting to build and form inside of me. I mean, it's a very exciting place within my own being right now.
I've been meditating for over 2 decades, but I gotta tell you, it doesn't always come naturally to me, and it hasn't necessarily gotten easier over the years. For real, even after all this time, my brain still takes a while to finally shut up and let me drop into that magical place of silence. And I hear from a lot of meditators that this is the case, but what if there was a way to get into a meditative state effortlessly and quickly? Well, there is. It's fast, safe, and it works every damn time. It's called New Calm. It's a subscription service that works on your phone on an app. It uses complex software along with musical tones to present the brain with a specific signal. and the brain simply follows that signal to your preset destination. And unlike traditional meditation, New Calm offers a tangible physiological shift in your state of being from the very first session. And I find it's not only useful for calming my mental chatter and helping me drop into a flow state. Whether I need to prepare for challenging tasks with a clear head, boost my creativity, or gently drift into blissful sleep, New Calm has Journey designed for any time of day and any mental goal. All you do is select the journey you want on the app based on how you want to feel, press play, and New Calm does the rest. So visit newcalm.com, that's NUCALM, and sign up for their 7-day free trial. Then when you're ready to join, use the code Luke and get 15% off any subscription. I legit swear by this technology, and I've been using it damn near every day and night for many years. So I highly recommend you check it out. Again, go over to newcalm.com. That's NUCALM. And once you sign up, use the code Luke.
Based on the historical relevance to this idea of kind of the feminine being squashed and diminished out of the kind of the leadership in terms of culture, what came to mind for me was the elimination of masculine energy men. This, right now it's like really, the masculine is very demonized. And I think, this is the conspiratorial side of me that, throughout history, there have been just power hungry people that have formed into small groups and have sought to extract energy, resources, and control over larger groups of people. And in that demonization of, the town oracle, shaman, witch, burned at the stake, the same thing has happened to the masculine. And I think for me, the new era is having a lot to do with some of us waking up to the fact that we've been suppressed in those ways. And so our relationship dynamic here in the home is a really great microcosm example of the power in unity and the power in those complementary forces working together and celebrating one another. And something that that I've been a little bit slow to learn, is to really realize what an asset your abilities are in that way, specifically to the piece of the oracle, the incredible intuition and discernment and inner knowing that the feminine is so skilled in, and it's like, then, the masculine in me, and when I've kind of checked myself, is like, yeah, just sheer force and charging ahead and making things happen and building and constructing and moving forward and setting goals and crushing them. And like, there's beautiful energy within that. The
Falcon Head energy.
The Falcon Head new era energy. But if I was a petty tyrant who wanted to control people.
A petty tyrant?
Yeah.
What is that?
That's someone who is inherently weak and lacks creativity, but has a thirst for power because they're trying to overcompensate.
Oh, like Petty?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I wouldn't want empowered women who were oracles and were really tapped into their discernment and intuition. And I wouldn't want strong men who were able to toe the line and were willing to die for their community and their family and their wife and their kids, right? Those are the ones you really want to, eliminate, right? And when you get two of those energies together, regardless of what gender they are, masculine energy and a feminine energy, and they form a union, now you have something that's very difficult to penetrate, and it's something that can really move things forward in terms of self-empowerment that then reverberates throughout their inner circle, their family lineage, into their immediate, neighborhood, community, micro community, into the macro community. And all of a sudden you have a more empowered society as a result of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, our home right here, which I oftentimes refer to as a temple, it very much is, it sits atop a small hill and it overlooks, and I know that it's just like a beacon, just sending transmissions out. And yeah, I really like how you spoke to that this is very much alive in our real life and our personal life out away from these microphones. And it brought to mind, the classic, I think, Gandhi quote of, be the change you wish to see in the world. And the other quote, I don't know who said this, but something like, if you want to change the world, change yourself first. I might have said that. I don't know. But it is that. And at times over the years, there might have been a wonky wheel on this cart of us figuring this out. But the vision that keeps coming to me in this topic is it's a weaving, right? And sometimes it takes the two people in the relationship or in the marriage a bit of time, especially if before entering into the marriage, like we both were celibate and single for a long time, and then all of a sudden you find one another. So it does, you have to give yourself a little bit of a grace recalibration time. But then, yeah, it's this new kind of weaving where even though you might be in that masculine, more driving force, inertia, capacity, keeping the bigger picture in mind that you have a true oracle of a wife, sitting in the next room and, taking enough of even if it's just a blip pause on the inertia radar to, come out and consult the family oracle for whatever, a potential business partnership or, launching a new product or taking, is it even worth the time to take a meeting with this person, whatever the case might be. Because in the long game, and again, in that biggest picture divine web, that is the more efficient route, as opposed to not taking that pause of the blip on the radar and pausing the inertia of the divine masculine force. And you just keep forcing on, not consulting the oracle, and then taking some missteps that cost way more time, way more energy, that probably will end up getting into an argument with your wife over. And it creates potential exhaustion for the family unit. So I think that's just an important point to speak to, because I do appreciate your drive. I mean, it has allowed me to learn so many different parts of myself over the last few years and experience life in a way that I didn't know was possible in terms of this semi-retirement, last few years. That wasn't necessarily on my wish list. And then once it started happening, I was like, oh, this should have been on my wish list. This is amazing. And I wouldn't be able to experience that if you didn't have that strong masculine energy in you. And you are such a powerful producer and creator. And I am equally as powerful, if sometimes not more powerful, in my oracle, in my seership, in my, God-given gift of discernment. So again, my point is, in the big picture and the long game and the holding of the lines that you're holding as a family structure, the most efficient weaving is taking a brief pause out of the masculine drive to consult the oracle.
Yeah, it reminds me of that term blind ambition, where you just like charge forward like a bull and you get things done, but you break a few things along the way.
Well, yeah, bull in a china shop.
Yeah. So
you're breaking some valuable china along the way.
Yeah, I think, and this obviously is just a universal principle. It's not restricted to a couple or a marriage or something, but I think part of the new era is, each of us learning how to identify what our strengths and weaknesses are, right? With and without the construct of masculine and feminine energy. Just like, what are you good at? And how does that align with what life path lights you up? What are you passionate about, and where do your passions and your innate skills collide? That's the thing that the world is asking of you, and the thing that's going to ultimately provide the most fulfillment for you. And as each individual person is most fulfilled and aligned with their mission, that ripples out to your kids and your friends and your family. And again, it's like all going back to the individual really identifying who they really are and identifying those strengths, and then also being honest about your weak spots and finding people with whom to collaborate, whether it's in a romantic relationship or not, to fill in those gaps and learning how to actually celebrate your differences. I mean, people talk about, unity and there's so much division. It's just like, dude, that's because people aren't celebrating people that are different from them in terms of their perspective and talents and worldview.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
We're set up, I think, largely through indoctrination and propaganda to operate in the world through adversarial relationships rather than open-mindedness and the ability to listen and the ability to admit when you were mistaken or admit where you might not have a strong suit. And so I've learned so much in our relationship. Just, I don't feel like, for example, my talents are being diminished if we have a family meeting and you're like, hey, here's some things that I see that you might not see. I've come to value that as like, oh my God, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, because now I have the things that I'm really good at, but I also have someone who's very different in their abilities that's complementary to me. And now we have like a real force of nature to work with. There's a lot of creative power and potential in that, because there are things that I'm really good at that you're less good at, and vice versa. Yeah. And so rather than trying to be like one another and get into a competitive dynamic, it becomes more and more complementary. And so it's been fun for me, actually. As I said, I've been a little slow in realizing this. I think just because I've, through my life circumstances, have been in a position to have to be self-reliant since I was really young. There wasn't a lot of guidance and support. And so, I've just been self-will. Like, I got to figure this shit out. I've been in survival mode my whole life. And so, settling into a marriage like ours has been a learning experience in a learning that I don't have to figure it all out myself, and that when I do, it's probably going to get messy at times, and as you said, be a lot more work in the long run. So it's been fun for me to go, oh wow, like if I'm sort of stuck on a decision, like there's someone in the next room I can go, hey, here's this thing, this opportunity or this person or whatever it is, and go, just feel into this. And then
and not even stuck, just like an additional opinion on it.
Yeah.
Even if you feel really sure, which, that's happened at times, you've thought pretty sure about somebody, and then I'm like, no way.
Yeah. Well, it also takes time, I think, in relationship to build trust, right? Not trust as in like that person's going to deceive you or something, but the kind of trust where you can depend on that person's abilities, right? So it's like, if I'm operating more from a masculine point of view, I'm thinking about things logically, what makes sense. It's like a very like mental process to do something or not do something, and you've had to learn how to trust my decision making about things, right? And just kind of go, okay, I don't really understand what he's talking about or where he's going with this thing, but I trust that he's smart enough to figure it out because he's using his mind, right? And so you've developed that trust, and likewise, I'm not as tapped into the subtle energies and intuition and just the gut feelings that you get and your discernment and but in many cases, very psychic abilities. I think we all have that, but I'm just less in touch with that than you are. So I've had to learn how to trust, say, I want to hire a new pool guy or whatever. And you're like, I don't know, man, that guy's energy is weird. I'm like, what? He's fine. Big deal, because it makes sense logically to me on paper, knows how to do the job, gave me a quote, makes sense. We haven't had a problem with the pool guy. I'm just using kind of an arbitrary,
love you, Alberto.
Yeah, arbitrary example.
Shout out to Alberto.
Arbitrary example. And then I've at times in the past ignored those cues, and I'm like, she's just being a little too picky or whatever, right? I discounted your seership, and then time and time again, your intuition has proven itself to be true. Therefore, my level of trust in your sort of inner emotionally guided perspective has grown. And likewise, your trust of my like intellectual, more logical way of doing things has grown too. So it's not an either or. I think the power in the new era is in all of our relationships, no matter how intimate they might be, to really identify other people's strengths and learn how to work together in cooperation and collaboration to build the kind of world we want to live in.
Yeah, amen. Also, with the new era, Jared, if you wouldn't mind, there's a dish of bugs on our altar. If you wouldn't mind, yes, that is correct. I meant to grab this before. Thank you, Jared. Here's my bug. This is like my museum specimen dish for...
I set my coffee down on the coffee table the other day, and there is a dead baby tarantula sitting right on the table. So you never know. You never know what you're going to find around here.
Yeah, but I did want to honor, these winged friends, this beautiful butterfly, this gorgeous locust, even this fly, we still got to shout out the fly, this beautiful phoenix moth. Look at that. The color probably won't pick up on camera, but it's like the most beautiful mossy forest green. It's so stunning. Got to be gentle with these. And then there's a cacao encrusted bee. Very, very tiny and delicate. There's a whole story with how she became cacao encrusted. But one of the things when you're speaking to the importance of checking in with oneself pretty regularly on like, what really lights me up now? That's a very important part of this new era equation for those that are wanting to tune in to this new architecture that might want to birth, is sitting in meditation with specifically that question. Like really, truly, okay, what lit you up? I don't care what lit you up over the last year, the last decade. If you've been a bowler all your life, like going to a bowling place. What do you call those places?
Bowling alley.
Bowling alley. Yeah, I almost said a rink, a bowling rink. We should go bowling sometime.
Let's do it. We have one right down the street.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But
then we could call you Bowling Alley. The tip jar is over there on the way out, folks.
But when I do these regular tune-ins, one thing that rose to the top of my current new era check-in list of what lights me up is the concept of wing and song. And my dear sister, Nicole Casanova, I knew as soon as she launched this online singing program, she called it Wing and Song. There was a subtitle to it. But in many spiritual and shamanic traditions, they believe it's the winged ones. It was the birds who actually taught humans how to sing. That's where song emerged from. So I wanted to take some time because in this past year, countless winged ones have shown up for me. I mean, we have the vulture wings. I have the crow feathers remember the crow as soon as we landed at the airport. I have all these winged creatures here that we keep at our altar. And I mean, I have parakeet wings that I've preserved. I have dove wings. I mean, the list goes on. And they all came to me in this past year. And it was large in part, I know, due to this whole throat chakra rebirthing, new activation that I had. And at the top of the list for me is singing sacred songs, singing medicine songs, playing the guitar. And I love when you and I do that together. So there's sometimes things will reemerge on your list, they'll show up in the number one spot again. But I wanted to speak to that because that's still lighting me up. My new book and deck idea are lighting me up. Miniature golf really lights me up. Anyone who's an investor out there, I have a brilliant miniature golf idea. I'm not joking. It's fabulous. If this resonates for you, message us. Let's talk. I want to bring this mini golf vision to life in 2025 and beyond. And also, lastly, I am looking to start to activate and really bring into 2025, having it be the year of celebration. And one of the reasons why is how we started this episode by saying, like, sometimes we forget, or I forget our wedding anniversary date. Like, you and I have just historically not been the best celebrators of our milestones. We never had an engagement party after we got engaged. We never had a housewarming party after we worked so hard to completely renovate this home and move in. We still have barely had anyone over aside from podcast guests. We never had anyone witness our wedding vows. We never, there's so many other things. Like even, on the other end of the spectrum, like when we had the miscarriage, I have had a couple of close friends come over to honor Jelly Bean's burial in our yard. Shout out to Kim and Peyton. Thank you so much for joining me in that space. But you get my point that we have just traversed so many different textures of things in our marriage. And the like kind of celebration of those have just kind of like, just dissolved behind us. So maybe sometime in 2025, maybe we just have one party that we'll label it the housewarming, engagement, wedding, we'll just like list all the things that we're celebrating and finally do a celebration. How's that sound?
I like it.
I haven't brought it up to him at all until now.
I like it. Yeah, I think I'm kind of a forward-thinking person, and so I'm kind of thinking of what the next milestone is versus going, there's a milestone right now to be acknowledged. So I think that's a great idea. And I like the idea of stacking them and compiling them. Otherwise, they're easier to forget. But that's also, I think one thing we wanted to talk about was a practice that we're starting to hone in a little bit, and that is the family meeting.
Yeah. So glad we do those. And giving a lot of shout outs, but shout out to Ksenia, my dear friend. I sent her a voice note a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I'll message you more later. Luke and I are about to have our family meeting in the yard. And she messaged back and she's like, tell me more. What are these family meetings? And I was like, if she's curious, maybe somebody else would be too. I mean, it pretty much is what the two words say. It's a family meeting in our yard. But I really love that we do those.
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to become siloed, even when you're cohabitating, right? I mean, I'm just on my thing, man. I'm just ambitious and productive and just kind of charging ahead. And I might not communicate with you about things that I don't feel are important for you to know, but you might have a different opinion about, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, really? We're doing that now? Why didn't you say anything? That kind of thing. Yeah. So to me, part of it is kind of in the realm of just practicality. If we're a team as a family, we have this partnership in life and so many different areas of life that it's sort of like having a board meeting, right? It's like you have business partners and, you get together once a month and, okay, what are our objectives? Where do we need help? What are our plans? It's part that. And then part of it is the relational upkeep of communication, and that if there are any little points of interference in the emotional cohesion of the relationship, small grievances, things you might have let slide in the moment because, you just didn't have time to like have a conversation about it.
Right.
If there are adjustments or fine tunings that need to happen, that those are, are addressed on a regular basis while they're still small and manageable and easy to pivot versus leaving things kind of undiscussed until they develop into patterns that could undermine the relationship anyway and turn into, a heavier grievance or, in worst cases, a resentment, right? Where you're sitting there kind of stewing about something because you didn't have the opportunity to bring it up. And life for all of us moves really fast. So I think it's been really...
But not for you anymore.
No, I've slowed down a lot.
You really,
I
really,
slowed my roll.
you what? Downshifted?
Oh, big time.
We're slowing down over here.
Yeah. I slowed my roll in so many ways.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of those family meetings. Like,
That's
hey,
true.
and you know, it's not like the family meetings are necessarily on a schedule or just serious, but I think we both just sort of,
We can sense when there's a list that's kind of growing.
yeah, or just, you know, we're just both
Checking.
doing our thing, and we're both in the house, but there's just a lot going on. And so, you know, things kind of stack up. There's all kinds of new developments in life that you haven't necessarily like really sat down and shared about. So yeah, I think it's a really great practice and a way to keep lines of communication open and to make sure that you're both headed in the same direction and that everything is very clear. And if there are any adjustments from something that's in the practical realm to something that is, you know, more in the subtle emotional realms, that those things are course corrected as you go rather than them developing into something that requires a lot more work to untangle later.
Yeah. And another reason for the family meetings is, you know, I mean, I guess this would apply for every person because we all have different levels of sensitivity and awarenesses. But sometimes I want to have a family meeting with you to like let you know, like, the state of my being lately. You know, like I remember I was reflecting on one that I don't know, it was maybe a few months ago at this point, but I like I really needed to tell you that the feeling that I'm just kind of living 24/7 on plant medicine, but I'm not on plant medicine. I was like, I really need to have a focused conversation with you about that so that you can really look into my eyes and hear me and get when I tell you this, that I'm needing to adjust. I mean, I've always been wildly attuned and sensitive, but I knew that explaining it in that way, you would hopefully get it, like the experiences that you've had, you know, on a sacred grandmother medicine journey where, you know, other worldly benevolent beings are creating new neural pathways in your brain, or, you know, these other beings visit you. Like, this is my everyday waking, walking life. And recently it had kind of gone to an even next level where, yeah, and just more realms and more textures of the realms that was getting even more pronounced. So, and I could feel like I needed to, there was going to be an integration time for me to like calibrate my system to adjust, you know, and to trust, you know, this change is coming in for a reason. Like, I'm not going to freak out about it. I'm not going to fight it. Like, it's here. And you, of all people, need to know that this is here. And so it's those kinds of reasons too, of like the feeling aspect, the feeling part of our being.
Yeah. Yeah. And the real-time check-ins, like I have worked to build a habit of also kind of letting you know where I am on any given day. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I feel totally like in the pocket, I just continue on with my day, but it's not, I'm not very habituated to telling someone if I'm a bit off. Like, I just kind of grin and bear it.
Well, I can see it.
Yeah.
But I know.
Yeah. But it's been helpful for me to just say, hey, you know, you don't need to change anything about the way you're going to go about your day to day, but just to let you know, I'm just off for whatever reason. If I know the reason, I'll share the reason. If I don't, I just say, heads up, I'm just kind of in a strange space today. And I think those, you know, those kind of, those structures of ongoing communication also tie someone into your field so that they don't then have to wonder where you are and what's going on with you. And they can also adapt to your need for less or more space or support and so on.
Yeah, like
right?
when we were driving last week to the muscle testing gathering, and it was a morning gathering, and you were like, I just got to let you know, really, really struggling over here. And you know, as much as I am a morning person, it was felt very active and alive in that car ride driving us over there and wanted to chat. Like I, had no problem just moving into silence and letting you try to see if you could even get out of the car when we got there, and stuff like that.
I mean, you get me in a car before 9 a.m. to go somewhere and be around people. It's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah.
That's also, again, that's the beauty of, knowing oneself, right? And kind of just coming into acceptance of that. I mean, it's like you're like that late at night. Like I would never try to have a serious conversation with you at 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Like you're out. Like 9, you're pretty much like fading you're fading into, that zone. And I'm
in drool mode.
I'm at like max energy at 9 p.m. That's
He's
like
Falcon Head energy.
Yeah, I am in new era energy. But you catch me before 11 a.m., I'm not going to have a lot to say. I'm still kind of learning how to be in the world after coming out of dream time and so on. Mm-hmm. But imagine, how many relationships we've had, and I'm sure many other people have, where you just, whether it's a friendship, business partnership, romantic relationship or what, where you just don't take the time to really learn and understand the other person, and therefore conflict arises just out of a lack of awareness and understanding. So much of that can be avoided just by kind of learning how people tick and honoring them for their idiosyncrasies and tendencies and propensities, and kind of just going, wow, I just love you as the perfect strange creature you are, and I'm learning how to love myself for the unique person I am. And then, then you can start to dance, because you know the dance floor, and the steps they're going to take, and mm-hmm. they know your steps, and so on. Becomes more of a waltz than a boxing match.
Pee-wee's hungry.
It's almost time for Pee-wee's dinner.
Pee-wee's doing the stare down that she does. She just locks in like this.
Pretty soon she's going to start tapping Jared on the leg.
And she's like, it's time for my burgers, please, Mama. Look, she's wagging her tail because she thinks someone's coming to save her with the burgers.
We're getting close. So hang on, sweetie.
So, speaking of that, she's about to get vocal. She's doing the stare down. Are we feeling complete? I mean, we have other tangents a long list of potential other tangents we could go down, but I don't know how many other doors we want to open.
Give me one more door. What speaks to you?
Another door. I mean, this one's not going to excite you, but I do want to let people know briefly that one possibility that exists in life is eliminating your chakras.
Oh, interesting.
I just felt compelled to want to let people know that is an option. And this option was one that I was deeply drawn and magnetized to and resonated with and fulfilled my very own chakra elimination. I meant to bring the book up. It's by Sunny Carl. I think her last name is Karl. And the book title is Making Love to Source. Fabulous book. And I rarely give book recommendations, but I'm obsessed with this book for a number of reasons. I wish that Sunny was still alive so that we could have her over, or you could interview her with something, or we could both interview her together. Wealth of wisdom in this tiny, small, pretty old book. And I didn't anticipate in a book of that title to come upon just a small area within one chapter where she explains about chakra elimination. But as soon as I read it, I just had this instant sense of knowing that this was for me. And it's a pretty simple practice that she explains in the book. We hear you, Pee-wee. We see you, sweetheart. She's giving me the stare down. But I just wanted to let people know, because I bet it's pinging for some folks when they hear me talk about it. I instantly felt a very positive marked shift, especially when I woke up the next morning. It's a practice that you activate right before you go to bed. And while you sleep, these pure love orbs come in and do the chakra elimination for you. And I felt a positive shift right upon waking, and have continued to feel this positive shift. I feel more wholly, healthily at one with myself more than ever before. There's just like a whole different expanse and unification in all parts of me, a wholeness that I've never experienced before from doing this. So hashtag just saying, you can do your own chakra elimination.
It's interesting. I remember when you came to me and shared your excitement about this discovery, and I thought, that sounds nuts, but if it makes her happy, go for it. You know, every spiritual tradition that I've ever benefited from, well, either has nothing to say about that part of the human experience or has to do with learning how to balance them, integrate them, master them, work with them, move
Each
them.
their own. I started the first, I think potentially the first practice on my shamanic path was doing chakra clearings for people. I very well understand the chakras. I have worked with my own and others thousands of times. And yet, I knew that this was the way for me. So she explains it all in the book. I forget what chapter. The whole book is worth reading. But
we'll put the book in the show notes. LukeStorey.com/573. Anything that is linkable in terms of references from this conversation, including the book that she mentioned, we'll put in those show notes.
One thing that you had noted you might want to talk about is the mental and emotional sovereignty, like inner not being dependent on external factors.
Oh, I could speak to that quickly. Yeah, she's only going to take quickly here.
Yeah, she's now on the perch giving us this.
She's like
she's moving closer
in our
and closer.
face now.
We hear you, sweet
But
pea.
this has to do with the new era piece. You know, it's like we live in unprecedented times, to say the least, right? I mean, the power structures and institutions of the world that have been creating the construct that we call life and society are rapidly changing. There are many people, speaking from the United States as kind of a pinnacle of Western society, at least in recent history. You know, there's big changes afoot. You got a portion of the population that are terrified and shaving their heads. You got, another portion that are celebrating what they perceive to be a renewal of freedom, etc. I don't know who is right or who is wrong and who's going to do a good job at running things or removing the people that are running things poorly, etc. But I do know from experience that I've had much more success working on my perception of the world, my interpretation of reality, being open-minded, and hopefully humble enough to know that the way I'm seeing things isn't the way they are. Mm-hmm. The way things are is the way I'm seeing them. And so I've noticed, there's definitely a different energy here in November. I mean, it's just a palpable change in the field that feels positive to me, which is not positive for many people. But the reason for that change is because people's perception has changed. Nothing has actually changed in real time in a concrete sense, geopolitically, legislatively, et cetera. Like, we're still living here in the same country we were living a couple weeks ago, right? But there's a different feeling, a different energy. Why? That's because perception has changed. Everything is perception. So part of the new era for me is each of us claiming the most powerful thing we have, and that is our agency over how we perceive things and how we choose to judge things positively or negatively, and how that actually colors our reality, So I'm always working myself to stay in a position of curious neutrality, right? Of just, hey, this could be bad. We'll see. Time will tell, right? This could be the greatest thing ever. Time will tell. But ultimately, each of our own level of happiness, satisfaction, serenity, peace is completely within our own grasp based on the degree to which we believe our thoughts, and that we attach to our judgments and opinions. And so I'm celebrating not the changes in the world, but I'm celebrating the fact that so many people have had a change in perception, which I think is positive. And whether they're right or wrong about their perceptions, we shall see. But the field has definitely lightened as a result of people going, wow, I think things are going to get better. And just to believe that things are going to get better, whether or not they've been duped by another false prophet or whatever, we will see. But it just goes to show how much belief really dictates our energy. You know, it dictates the kind of emotional landscape that we live in. And so it's just a affirmation to me to spend my time each morning to really check in on my relationship with my highest self, with my soul, with God, and to do my very best to stay in alignment with that, because that's the thing that's going to govern my perception.
I think that that's very well said. And
I can tell Cookie loves it too. She's like, that's great, Papa. Where's the goddamn burgers?
Yeah, she's like huffing and puffing into the mic. So for anyone listening, if you're wondering what that sound is, it's because Cookie is now as close as possible to alert us that it is in fact her dinner time.
It's that time. Well, let's wrap it up. Feed the dog. Keep it moving. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you joining us in these conversations, and thank you, my sweetheart wife, for
we got two sweetie girls
for having these chats with me. I always really enjoy these opportunities for us to share with one another and share with other people, and hoping that people derive some benefit from what we have to say.
I marked this new era episode by wearing a hat on a podcast for the first time ever in my life.
Wow.
This is such an important day. We could create a holiday around it, I suppose. It's a very big deal.
You're probably the only woman in Austin that has never worn a wide brim hat on a podcast.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. One was I wasn't having a great hair day. Two, now that you are inviting me to do these pretty often with you, I'm like, let's have fun and play around with the different looks. You know, I wore my glasses last time, had never worn my glasses on a podcast. And so, yeah, I was just like, I have a few cute hats. This one has some porcupine quills and a feather in it. So I thought, let's commemorate this new era talk with wearing a hat for the first time. And we don't have to wear those silly headsets anymore on your show. So it allowed me the freedom to do this.
Beautiful.
So yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And I am excited to hear about your new eras, and excited to see where your new architectures guide you in life.